Hi, everyone. This is Heather Vox, the co-founder and CEO of the Million Person Project. And the Million Person Project is a global project about love, storytelling, and connecting change makers. And I'm excited to be here today with the one and only Rachel Aidan. And Rachel Aidan is an incredible business leader and also a very, very courageous storyteller. And so I'm very honored to have you join us to be part of the conversation on personal storytelling. And I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So, I'm a coach, a speaker, and most importantly, a real life in the trenches business owner. And I work with entrepreneurs who pursue growth, both kinds of growth, financial and more importantly, the personal growth. And so my approach to coaching combines the head and heart, so to speak. I work with concrete business applications and tools in the critical areas like operations, finance, management, leadership, marketing, and then the personal transformative practices that really illuminate our purpose, meaning, and possibility for our work in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You have shared your personal story on pretty big stages. And the question that I have is, why is telling your personal story important to you?
Initially, the idea of sharing my story was a really personal one. It wasn't so much that I was looking to share it as I had a sense of wanting to get it out of me. This kind of like desire to be free of it or to let it be free. And I'd been working so hard and for so long to hide it that it was really big. And so my personal story is one that includes 20 years of trauma and abuse and violence and silence that surrounded that. And later, one of resilience and growth. I just needed to tell the truth for myself. And I just had this fear that I was going to come to the end of my life, never having told it. And that was something in there too. So I saw that the process of storytelling as a way to work with it, kind of a different way. And I came to know that storytelling is a super restorative practice. And I think it reminds people that we hold the power to create change. And it really creates space for listening into being, this concept. And I think it also reminds me a lot when I have the opportunity to speak of those who don't get to be heard. And ultimately, I think we inspire others to step forward and share their story too.
And when was it that you decided to tell your story, and why was it then?
Well, I think I committed to telling the story about 3 years before I actually did tell the story. And I think that's important to know. I think in storytelling, the idea of like, I have to tell it and moving to that space instead of engaging the process of telling it is really important. And, it came from doing a lot of personal work, and it really came from this convergence of promise I made rather as a 7-year-old girl, and the conflict of being an adult that wasn't fulfilling that promise. And this, but I can share a little bit about what I mean when I say that is I was 7, and I had this vivid memory of hiding behind a dryer so that I wouldn't be found and beaten, which was a normal occurrence. And I had this moment where I was essentially praying, and I was talking to this higher, power, God, whatever you like, and just made this promise that if I made it through, if I made it out, if I was okay when I was a grown up, I would come back and I would help other girls. I would do something. And I never forgot that promise, but it was, through our work that I was seeing how much I was abandoning that story. I wasn't going near it. And, so it felt like that, the tension between those places, that was really important to me. And I remember a question throughout the years about like, what's at stake if you don't? And I think that's such a powerful question. Like, what's at stake if fill in the blank. And when I think about what's at stake if others before us didn't tell their story, like think about that. All these people that stepped forward and were seen and visible in their truth. I mean, it's really important. And I don't think we had enough space to be with that question. The night, as far as how it like felt when I finally did it, I look back and I think it felt like jumping out of a plane, right? Like the anticipation of this thing you're gonna do, and it's tandem, right? Like you have people with you, but it doesn't matter, and then you do it. And I think the free falls, like the doing it, you're not even there. You're in it. And then after, it's like you're on the ground again and you're like, I made it, I'm safe, and I want to vomit, but but you did it. So it's two-part telling. It's that process leading up to it is so deep and transformative. And then when you actually share it, it gives birth to something completely new.
Mm. And what do you feel like it gave birth to in your life?
I think it gave birth to being comfortable, being visible in the truth. So I was really terrified of that.
Mm.
I was afraid of being judged and being shamed. And, my story was like this old country that I belonged to that I never wanted to see again or have any relation to. And I wanted to stay really distant from that. And so I didn't know where to begin after being so secretive for so long. And I remember feeling like I had like all this experience, but none of the language to share it in. Mm-hmm. And so it gave birth to that, like seeing all that and giving it a place to, put it out there for good.
And what supported you in finding the language for it? How did you come to the language?
That process, began a number of years before we started working together, and I kept going to write about things, and I would just feel this like the words like jailed the story. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't helping. And I remember our work on the story map mm-hmm. was so huge. And I think we did that, and then we had like a couple of years before mm-hmm. we came back to it. And that was intense because it took it out of the written word and put it into like imagery and symbol that I knew what this little single symbol really meant. Mm-hmm. So that was a really powerful exercise.
Yeah, the story map, the life map for me, it's for our viewers, what it is, it's a tool that we use at the Million Person Project that we have borrowed from our amazing trainer friend, Rosa Gonzalez. And what the tool helps and supports us in doing is, like Rachel said, allowing your story to exist on paper and reflect back to you. It's an exercise to be able to view your story yourself. And it doesn't matter what it looks like or means to someone else. It's exactly what you said. It's like a little symbol, but everything that means behind it. And when you look at that, the energy around your story can transform, and you can start to see things in a way that you've never seen them before. And that's why we use the life map as a starting place to our process, is so someone can just look at their map and say, that is, and then from there, what are the most defining turning points? What are the foundational values that have defined who you are in the way that you are today? What is your advice for other people in navigating, a lot of us are sitting with untold stories. A lot of the viewers watching are sitting with untold stories. And what is your advice to navigate that and to feel your way into whether or not it's time to share?
One of the things that really worked for me was this practice of compassion. And what I mean by that is that, say there were, pieces in this story where there were really tender parts. And um, I would imagine myself, or I would imagine a child, a girl that's, 7, 10, 12, 15, these, like if she was in front of me and I know what she's navigating, how would I engage her? Because I think the self-dialogue can be, a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of doubt. And so it was this way of like getting it outside in front of me to say like, okay, well, how would I handle this? I would hold this child. I would protect them. I would, let them know how strong they are and what they were going to get through. Like I just got into like the conversation between now and then. And so I thought that was so powerful. It still is very powerful process. There's so many great practices out there that let you get close. It's like, it's hard to get close at first. We would never see a child dealing with some of the things that we've all dealt with and be like, you don't need to talk about that. Get over it. I mean, you would never say this kind of thing, right? But we do it to ourselves so much. And so I think recognizing, how you're holding your story and coming to it with compassion is so important. And other than that, I think about guiding questions. What does it mean to have all the support and time you need to share your story? How and who is around you to support you? I think that's another really important piece, whether it's a mentor or a coach or a community program or an arts-based practice. I think there's something around having some community around you that understands the depth and the ethics involved in telling certainly sensitive stories, Yeah, those are my things. And I think, what stories move you? What story are you not hearing that you want to hear? Because you might be the person that needs to tell it, Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd be curious to know what was it that you were navigating? Why weren't you sharing your story before? And what was it that you were navigating?
Yeah. So I had this belief that if anyone knew the truth about me, that they would wish like death upon me, that they would be disgusted. And so it's navigating these heavy personal beliefs about being damaged and worthless and unlovable. Like nobody wants to hear this. And I think we all navigate those spaces in our stories. I was also navigating, fear around like, oh, if I go near this, I'm going to fall apart. And so all this work I'm doing, I'm going to be a mess and I'm going to look weak. And how, I was just like, think navigating control, wanting to keep, maintain control. And it was hard because I was getting into my story. I was going, where are all these stories of women, especially women or girls, that have stories like mine and are in leadership. Mm-hmm. Right. And I remember a big piece came when I started studying some statistical data, and the World Health Organization was reporting, it's 1 out of 5 women will experience sexualized violence. So that's just one category of trauma or abuse. And you do the math real quick and you go, well, half the population, it's 3.5 billion roughly. So it was 700 million women worldwide have just, this one cross section of a big spectrum of abuse and violence and such. And I remember telling you, I was like, where are all the stories? Like, I was mad. Like, what, this silence is huge. Like 700 million, it's almost twice the population of the entire United States. Mm-hmm. And how many stories are we hearing? Like, if you're in this situation and you're looking for some inspiration or something to grab onto that says, I'm not doomed to this life of XYZ. Well, there's not a lot of stories out there that connect the two. so I was navigating, learning a bigger context, that my story was an our story,
Mm-hmm.
and where were all of our stories
Mm-hmm.
in the silence piece. So
And when you shared your story, how did you feel the silence break, or what was that experience like for you?
yeah, I think part of me, I felt like my little 7-year-old Rachel was like just soaring. Like I spoke for her in complete integrity and honesty. It's so indescribable, but
There's a Nigerian poet that has a quote that says, "Stories can make the heart grow larger." And that has been my experience working with you, is that I literally, it's like my heart sometimes feels like it's breaking, and it actually physically hurts. It's like, oh, on our calls where I'm like, ugh. And then it feels like, oh, I'm not used to this feeling, but maybe it's not a heartbreak. Maybe my understanding of humanity and the complicated journey of love and family and friends and community, it feels like your story invites us to a new level of acceptance of humanity, of the good, the bad, the unthinkable. And so I really, really appreciate you for sharing your story. And I also agree, like, oh, we touch one life. And I believe that you stand on the edge of touching millions and millions of people's hearts with your leadership and with your story. I think it's incredibly important. I would love to hear, like, explicitly how you see your story as part of your leadership.
in the context of coaching and working with people, the connection I have with people is so important. Like, that's just the most important thing. And I think a lot of times, I'm often working with women who are in business, and so there's this race to kind of get to um, building and growth and all the kind of concrete stuff. And I just think there's this complete kind of void and this absence of, well, we can get to that, but who you are and what you stand for is actually really important. And so we have to take some time to look at the patterns in our lives. And not everybody is this really deep, thick, but most of the time there's stuff we're not really conscious of that is really informing what we're up to in the world. And I think we got to step back, and there's so much juicy stuff there that we tend to skip over in the current way we lead.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my biggest ahas around storytelling and its profound impact in leadership is, I was longing for this connection, and I'd realized that it was like the depth and, let's see, like, quality of the way I was relating to myself
Mm-hmm.
was really a direct reflection of, like, the capacity I had to be that with others. So,
Mm.
I wasn't getting that deep because I was afraid, I was pushed back. And so I think it's true for all of us. And so, when I could see, like, the silence and the denial and these things that I was doing to me that I know others do to themselves, it begged this question of, like, well, think about it. The space we hold for us is kind of a reflection of, like, what we can hold for others. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it brings up things around integrity
Mm-hmm.
and ethics. Like, how can I lead this person when I'm not really wholly going there for myself?
Mm-hmm.
So I learned that my personal story, it is my why.
Mm-hmm.
It is my why. And, I'm deeply interested in finding and listening and helping lift up others in their stories and their work. It restored a sense of integrity for me that, I've walked on that path, so I'm well equipped to be a partner on the path with others. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
leadership.
Yeah, and I'd love to close just by hearing how you believe that exploring and sharing your personal story has been a part of your healing or is a part of healing in general in the world?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think there's this African proverb I came across. It's like, it says it all. It says, you cannot heal what you conceal. Right. And I love that. It's like, of course. um, but I think it's so interesting because you get to almost restory or reframe the story of self, because you come to it from a place of now instead of like being in it. And that's easier said than done. There's a whole practice, right, in that shift. And I think once you do that, you, like, for me, I was like, oh my God, like, I felt this sense of connection with myself I'd never had, which kind of like excited me, because I was like, I could have this with other people. Like if I feel this way. And then I felt this sadness, like, well, I've been missing out because I was guarding so much, and I didn't want to miss out anymore. And so that connection. And then, what got built on top of that was kind of this wider context of what I can now do in the world. Right. So it's like, it just kept widening the lens. And that was so powerful. So I think our stories really open us up to ourselves and then kind of connect us to like this meta narrative. Like I said, like your story, is usually our story. And there's a sense of belonging that comes from realizing that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being you and for having the courage to be all of who you are in front of other people and sharing yourself with us and doing the work to walk that path until it felt right. It still felt scary. I remember the day that you were sharing, that you were doing the keynote. I was abroad, but even, in the emails, I was experiencing like,
yeah,
like, you got this, Rachel. And it's a lot to navigate all of that energy flowing inside you, the nervousness, the fear of stigma, the, oh my God, and is this going to be recorded, and where's it going to be, and how's it going to affect the people who are in the story in my life, and whoa, and to stand in your truth and to stand in your commitment and to stand and to honor the commitment that you made in the laundry room and to say, this truth is not going home with me. The silence will be broken today. And being a part of that journey with you has been incredible. And I really want to say to you that I honor you. And I would love for you to share with our viewers how they can stay up with what you're doing, get involved, and be a part of your world.
Yeah, so there's a site, it's rachelaidan.me, and my email, which I think you guys will post.
Yeah.
You guys can find it there. And I just shoot an email, and see what you're up to. I really love to explore more of this kind of question I'm holding right now around these kinds of narratives and women's leadership in the world. Something very interesting, and I find very little on the topic. So I would love to find people to work with that those intersections are very familiar and alive to them. So yeah, and thank you. It's been just amazing working together. I have so much gratitude for you. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in and for listening to Rachel share her wisdom and parts of her story. We will see you tomorrow. Bye.